All right, Dan. Welcome to. I don't know why I addressed this to you. That's not normally how I do things, but all right. Well, everybody and Dan, welcome to the Week 11 edition of Hot Takes and Hot Cakes, the live Sunday morning hangout brought to you by Sportable. And if you couldn't tell, I talked about this in my Wednesday podcast. I'm pretty tired right now. We're here in the thick of the NFL season, and I'll admit to being a little worn out. I don't know about you, Dan, but I am sort of feeling the grind lately.
Yeah, well, it's also Sunday morning, so it's always a little tougher on Sunday morning.
Always.
Got a nice little glass of coffee over there. Little fun fact: made myself a bacon, egg, and cheese croissant this morning. Besides the fact that it was amazing, I drank it with this coffee glass, and now every time I refill the coffee glass, still get a little taste and smell of that bacon. Good way to get your morning going. Anytime you can taste or smell bacon, whatever you do, and every time you sip something or eat something, you're doing the right thing, I think.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, at least you got your morning started off right. This is my first cup of coffee, and I don't have any more creamer. So, not that that's why people watch this show, hear about my creamer status, but that's a little distressing fact about me this morning. So we'll see if that affects my show performance, and we'll just see how it goes. Okay, let's get right into the questions, Dan, that we have.
I gotta say one thing first, though, Matt, just in case anybody hasn't had a chance to yet. If you didn't have a chance to, just head over to Sportable. If you spend maybe 10 to 13 minutes tops there this morning, you're going to see a lot of great content from the week. Content takes maybe 20, 30 seconds of ours to read. It's really just fact, actionable information, bam, type stuff. And we got a lot of good stuff this week. I saw some good stuff from Sean Tomlinson. I posted some good stuff. There was just a bunch of other people too. I couldn't even keep up with the names because there was a lot of content coming out this week. So check out Sportable. That's who hosts this podcast. We're all contributing to them. We're all trying to get it going as fast as we can because there's a lot of good stuff over there, and we just need eyeballs on it because soon people say, hey, listen, I can head over there and get all the information I need for daily and for my regular leagues, and I don't even have to spend that much time during my week. And I can use that other time to cook bacon, egg, and cheeses in the morning and go on my day. So, but after this, just wanted to say that. But yeah, let's get going on the questions for sure.
Yeah, and also I guess we should mention the big news on Sportable this week. Thank you, Dan, for being a better company man than I am. Now if you sign up exclusively through the newsletter, is that right? You get Rich Rebar of XN Sports and RotoViz and also Sportable. You're going to get his exclusive DraftKings daily picks. So
let me tell you something. Rich Rebar I said this like a few months ago when I first got going. For my money, he might be the best in the business at fantasy football.
He really is. He's
definitely top 5.
His worksheet over at XN Sports, I mean,
yes.
That just has a ton of information that Rich gets there. It's incredible. Rich. So that's some valuable stuff. If you sign up for the newsletter on Sportable, you're going to get that. You're going to get those picks of Rich's, and you'll probably profit a little bit off it. So it's like our little gift to you. So it's incredible, and yeah, Sportable's great, and heads up to Dan for remembering to say that. I would have totally forgotten because, as mentioned, first cup of coffee comes full circle. Okay, so now we can get into the questions. All right, so we've got one in here from @TreeTree123456. That's one of my favorite Twitter handles that we get to ask us questions. Hopkins, Blue, Rashad Jennings, 0.5 PPR, pick 2 out of those. So DeAndre Hopkins, Alfred Blue, and Rashad Jennings. And we should mention right up here at the top, Alfred Blue's in discussion here because, Arian Foster is pretty much definite he's not going to play. So, Blue is in line for a lot of carries. So out of those two, the two Texans and then Rashad Jennings, which what's your call here? And I'm assuming that's Rashad Jennings. He didn't actually say it could be Greg Jennings, but I mean, come on, we're gonna assume Rashad.
Yeah, I'm assuming Rashad too. So a lot of the week, you had Tom Coughlin make the kind of declaration after practice one day that Jennings won't be the full workload type guy we've known him to be. That he might have some kind of split this weekend. I don't totally buy it. I know how the Giants work. I know how Tom Coughlin works, and if Jennings looks good, if Jennings is playing well like they think he will be, I don't see them taking too much off his workload. Andre Williams has really struggled. He's really struggled in pass protection, so can't see him playing too many obvious passing downs, which the Giants will probably find themselves in, given the state of their defense. So I like Jennings as a bulk play this week. Now, it's a risky play for sure, but I do think he has the highest combination of ceiling and floor out of the three. Obviously, Blue has a very high floor. He's going to get a ton of carries, going to get a ton of touches, but he's also playing in an offense that made a move to Ryan Mallett, a player we haven't seen yet at all this year, a quarterback we haven't seen anything of from. So there's a risk that that offense can just shut down, and that same risk goes for DeAndre Hopkins, who should benefit from Mallett because he'll probably make the offense a more vertically oriented attack, and he'll probably open things up for the entire offense. But he could just struggle greatly out of the gate. Teams will probably blitz him to start. Can he handle the blitz? Can he find the hot reads? I haven't liked what I've seen from him, but that's all preseason stuff, so it's really tough to judge. Players are really different a lot of the time in the preseason. So, in all actuality, I think that he's probably the highest risk play. So if you're looking for floor, I'd go Jennings over Blue. I know Blue is set to have what's supposed to be a bigger workload, but the 49ers just lost Patrick Willis. Chris Borland's been playing very well in his place, but he's still not Patrick Willis, and he never will be. So I think Jennings is going to play a lot more than people think, and I think he's actually a somewhat safe play. So I'd roll with Jennings in this one. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, Rashad Jennings is one that I've struggled with. What's my take on him this week? Just because, I wanted to know if I should put him in some daily lineups or not, but I just felt like, even for his price, there was probably others with better matchups. So I don't have a lot of Rashad Jennings this week. I would still start Hopkins, even though I'm really weary about Ryan Mallett. I don't think he's a good player. And I also, just by the way Andre Johnson has talked about the move and everything, it sure sounds like that those two might have a good connection. So maybe Mallett is actually going to look more towards Johnson, whereas these other guys have been looking at Hopkins. So there's just a chance that, just a small chance that maybe Hopkins kind of returns to that number two role. Though it's not for certain. So, but I think I'm still going to start Hopkins this week just because he always has a pretty good amount of upside. He's such a good player. He's really emerging. And then I think I'm going to go Blue over Jennings. I think the matchup is better. I want to see Jennings, 1 week off the injury before starting him. Even though when I think he's right and he's healthy, I think he's a no-brainer start every week. I'm just not sure if I'm going to take the risk this week. So I think I would go with the two Texans here.
All right, interesting. So we're a little off on this one.
Yeah, a little bit. And hey, when we disagree, it's better to just go. It's better to then just follow your own gut. Whichever piece of advice you found more convincing.
There you go.
And that's what fantasy football is all about. We're here to answer questions, guide you the right way, but we're not omniscient. We don't know everything. Or at least maybe I don't. I don't know. Dan might be omniscient. I can't tell.
I'm not that clairvoyant. I wish I was a little more clairvoyant. Maybe I wouldn't have drafted Monty Ball this year.
Oh. Yeah. I still can't believe people were taking Monty Ball in the first and second round, but that's a conversation for another day. That's a hindsight argument, but whatever. Anyways, so I'll keep moving right along, and this one comes in from @rsmith82, Rebecca Smith, loyal listener of the show, and we really appreciate her. So she asked us, Martellus Bennett or Michael Rivera at San Diego. Obvious concerns with Bennett injury and Bears being garbage. Well, she is right. The Bears are terrible. They are a terrible football team. However, I'm still going to say Bennett here. I think this game could actually turn into one with a lot of points being scored. The Vikings could really take advantage of that Bears defense, which was just, embarrassingly torn apart on Sunday night last week. When they showed us kind of those all-22 angles, just some of those coverage schemes, it was just unbelievably bad. It was incredible. So, the Minnesota offense isn't great, but they could score a lot of points just based off the matchup, which would require the Bears to score a lot of points. I think Martellus Bennett has a pretty decent chance of scoring this week, even though it's not September, and that does seem to be the month where he puts up the most production. And Rivera, I think he's a decent filling guy. I kind of like him as a player, but I think his upside is always capped on that Oakland offense. I just don't see him as a player who has, any sort of 15-point plus upside every week, you're kind of guessing as when that game is going to come. I know he caught 12 passes in a game, so you like that for PPR. But I still see him as kind of a safe floor player. But I like Bennett's upside this week over Rivera. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I kind of see this the exact same way. I mean, Rivera definitely, he got 11 targets, 8 receptions last week, which is a nice bulk. And it is true that Martellus Bennett tends to fade, and I think this dates back to his breakout season with the Giants after kind of whittling away on the Cowboys bench for his first few years of his career, because he gets injured. So he had an injury last week. He missed all practice, ended up playing, but he always this is that year where the Giants got injured last year, this year, and he gets injured, and then his production falls off because he's playing through an injury. He's not as effective. So I don't expect him to be the same effective tight end one, which he really was over the first month of the season. He was basically the best tight end in football. But at the same time, it just boils down to the fact that Bears defense is disgusting, as Matt described. It's harder to even talk about it. You have to kind of see it for yourself. I think the best thing that we were able to do this week was check it out on NFL Game Rewind, because as Matt mentioned, it was really wild to see that defense on second glance after the Sunday Nighter. But I don't know if that helps Bennett, because I think it'll keep the ball in the Vikings' hands. But I just see more scoring opportunities for the Bears. I see more scoring opportunities for Bennett. The upside is there with Bennett, and it's not there with Rivera. And the floor is only a little bit higher for me for Rivera. So I'll take somebody with a little lower floor but a much higher ceiling, and that's Bennett. So that's my call on this one too.
Yeah, well, it's nice to get back to a happy, agreeable place with you, Dan. I feel like the universe is at peace when we agree on a question.
Here we go.
Okay, this one comes in from @FantazGuy on Twitter, and he asked, should I trade Vincent Jackson and Roddy White to get T.Y. Hilton in a non-PPR? I'm going to let you take this one first, Dan.
Say that one again, I'm sorry.
Would you trade Vincent Jackson and Roddy White to get T.Y. Hilton non-PPR?
So this one's really tough, I think. I think it depends on your roster. So are you using V-Jax and Roddy on a regular basis? Do you have guys that you can replace them with? Do you have maybe a high upside Mike Evans on your bench? Do you have somebody like Devontae Adams you can stream times on your bench? Guys like this, upside wide receiver 3-4 type plays, Jarvis Landry type guys. I mean, you just need to have something on your bench, and it's not just if I trade these two for one, I'm going to have a waiver wire for the rest of the year, because I do think that VJax is starting to really get it going a little bit for him, as much as the Tampa Bay offense can go, and he's probably got a few more of those easy NFC South matchups on slate. But at the same time, he's not really becoming the number one option in that offense. It's turning into Mike Evans, which is a little bit somewhat surprising. Maybe that will even out. I feel like touchdown production is somewhat fluky. But Roddy White, I'm just not too big on thrilled on Roddy White for the rest of the year. That Atlanta offense is really bad. They had a good game last week, but it was against a really, really bad defensive front and just a bad defense overall, the Bucs. Of course, like I just mentioned with Jackson, he's going to see a lot of NFC South for the rest of the year as well, which is always a good thing. So, I mean, the matchups will probably be there for both those two, and then you're upgrading to a guy like T.Y. Hilton, who still shares a lot of he's not really a red zone guy, I should say, and he's not the biggest guarantee for touchdowns because they have so many options there. So I don't know, when I'm trading two players I see as wide receiver 3-2 types, I want something a little better than Hilton in return, unless I have the bench to make up for it. So I think it depends on your roster really for me, because it's so close. Can you offer any kind of better advice there, Matt?
Yeah, I'm about to personally apologize to one of my friends on Twitter, Kyle Rodriguez, and the rest of Colts Twitter over the summer. I sent out a tweet that said T.Y. Hilton was the most overrated fantasy commodity coming into the season, and most overrated real life NFL player, and I was pretty much completely wrong about that. I like to tell Kyle that because he still calls me on it. He's still every week.
I'll never let that down, I'm sure.
No, I'll never leave that. That's one of those ones that you say, Kyle, and he writes. He's a great writer. Bleacher Report, a few other Colts places he writes for. He every week when I ask for a perception receiver to do, he asks me.
Yeah.
He asks me, will you do T.Y. Hilton, or do you not do overrated players? And I just have to shake my head at my own idiocy. But so T.Y. Hilton, we know, has gone on to kind of become a top 10 fantasy receiver. He's just getting fed a ton of targets in an offense. I really think he's going to blow up tonight. I think he's going to have a great game. So I'm looking at Hilton as a guy that if you can trade these two players, even though you're right, you're going to have a ton of good matchups in the NFC South. I see Jackson as kind of fading away and Roddy White sort of kind of leveling off. I would definitely do this trade. I would want to package those two for an elite option like Hilton. In my opinion, an elite option in fantasy. That was a mistake by me to call him an overrated player. And I definitely think if you can get him, you should. That would be a great get for these two kind of guys, these older fading guys. If you could package them and get Hilton for the rest of the season, I think that's a smart move. So sorry, Kyle and Colts Twitter. But anyways, so moving along, I guess this is another question from Rebecca Smith. She asked us Julian Edelman or Jordan Matthews in the slash, and I guess that is the flex. So who's a better flex play this week, Dan? Jordan Matthews or Julian Edelman?
Now, I like Jordan Matthews. This is not my pick, but I'll start by saying I do like Jordan Matthews. Like I said, I really like to target guys who had the chance to practice with when a new quarterback comes in, I should say, like Mark Sanchez, who's been taking a lot of practice reps with the second team all throughout training camp, preseason, and the regular season. I like to target a receiver like a third receiver like Jordan Matthews because he's had a lot of practice reps with Sanchez. So it's clear they've developed a nice rapport. He's throwing to him every day, and it's been obvious just based on the targets and production he's kind of had under Sanchez, Jordan Matthews. So I don't really see him slowing down too much. The reason I'm going Edelman here is because I just love Edelman's matchup here. I wrote about it this week. I think he's going to see like 50 to 60% of his snaps against Greg Toller of the Colts. And the whole thing with the Colts is they've been a pretty solid pass defense, but a lot of that has been because of Vontae Davis. They're kind of a one-man show back there. It's not just all Davis. They're getting a good pass rush by blitzing extra guys. But I think the Patriots are the type of team that can kind of neutralize that. They have a good pass protection scheme, and they have good pass protectors on their line. And I think they'll send some extra blockers really to take care of that. So it's kind of just going to be matchups, receivers versus corners. And if Vontae Davis is going to get rid of Brandon LaFell, which he should for most of the game, since Vontae Davis plays 95% of his snaps at right cornerback, and Brandon LaFell mostly lines up as the split end, that will probably leave Edelman with Greg Toller and with kind of the other cornerbacks of the Colts. And that's just a great advantage, great matchup for him. So I think that Brady's not stupid. Brady's smart. This is one of the highest over-unders of the year at 57.5. So Vegas thinks it'll be high scoring. If you look at last season, they scored 65 when these two teams matched up in the playoffs, the Colts and the Patriots. There's no real weather concerns as of now, but even if you look back to that game, it was really windy and rainy for that playoff game. So I see a lot of points coming in. I think that Edelman's the best matchup Brady will see on the field. Obviously, besides Gronk, he'll get Gronk going just because there's no way a defense can really defend Gronk. But Edelman's going to see a lot of one-on-one looks, a lot of clear space, a lot of, in breaking routes that are going to be wide open and that he can do stuff with after the catch. So I kind of like Edelman a lot in this one. He's one of my favorite plays. I got him in a lot of dailies this week, I. So I'm going Edelman here. How do you see it, Matt?
Yeah, I'm really don't have a great feeling about the two, and you had a very convincing argument. I think I kind of see them really similarly this week, so I don't think you can necessarily go wrong. But I would probably play Edelman too, just because of that high over/under. And interestingly enough, with Matthews, he's going to get to face Casey Hayward a lot, who's the Packers slot corner, and Matthews is generally the slot receiver. And people that didn't like Matthews coming out of Vanderbilt, and I think we were both fans of his. Back draft time, yeah. So this doesn't include us, but people that didn't really like Jordan Matthews, they questioned whether he could separate from man coverage, whether he could make plays in contested situations, and I don't know if some of that worry is legit, but we're going to get to kind of see that with Hayward this weekend, because I'm pretty sure he was only allowed like 6 catches or something this year. I think I saw that stat thrown around. I'm not sure, though. I'm pretty sure it was a Pro Football Focus stat, so you could probably tell better than I would. But Hayward's a really great player, and we're going to get to see how Matthews gets to go against him. So I really want to monitor Matthews in this game, in a game that another one with a high projected point total. But I would think I would still go Edelman, just a little bit safer to me. that feels kind of sacrilegious because I do have a lot of Matthews over Edelman in daily. I always feel like Edelman's a player I forget about. So this was a good question. Maybe I can go back and look at some of my lineups and see if I can fit Edelman in there. He's always a player I overlook, but he is a solid option. I think this week especially, matchups dictate that he's going to get open pretty frequently.
Yeah, I mean, and you're spot on there. I mean, Casey Hayward has only allowed 6 receptions on the season, only 11 targets, which is probably an even better sign because it's a testament to him. People aren't targeting him because he's got good coverage. So no cornerback in the league with over 200 snaps has allowed less receptions. So, yeah, that's a really good point and a really good thing to point out. When you're looking at these matchups, these individual matchups make a big deal. So hopefully these are the things you'll go by, and this is the piece of advice you'll last take away before making your lineup decisions because, listen, it's a game of matchups, the NFL. And I wouldn't want to go against Casey Hayward right now. With my 5'8", 40 speed.
That's a good point. Okay, so
but I had a good agility score.
Well, hey, what's your dominator rating?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of yards in college.
Oh gosh. Oh well. All right. I don't even want to get into what my 40 speed would be. I think I'm shorter. I got more explosiveness in short areas, but I don't have great long speed. And I am over 6. I am 6'3", so that maybe that helps me as a red zone weapon. Okay, we're off the rails here. And let me come back to reality here. So we've got one question. Also, I want to give a side note here. I'm back off track again, but I have some Jameis Winston argument going on in my mentions because I retweeted a tweet about him, and I'm hating this because it keeps popping up in the background here, and I don't even want to know what it says. But all right, focus.
All right, you back?
I'm here. I'm back.
I know Jameis Winston gets you heated, Matt, but listen.
I don't even want to even sort of.
Before you get into it, pro or for Winston? I just want to hear one word to answer that.
For.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't say that right. I said pro or for.
Yeah.
That should have been for or against. But anyway, go on. Let's get on to the question.
I'm for Winston. What about you? No, I got to know your take.
I need to watch more film. I like his tools and I like the way he throws the seams and the outs, but
okay.
I don't love his decision making right now.
You made me give one answer. I would have loved to say that too, but I see how it is. Okay.
You probably are for his decision making right now too. I don't love the reads he makes. I don't love how he. I think maybe with time that could be better, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, with any draft prospect outside of maybe a few Mountain West guys and Devontae Parker, because I've been doing some research, I'm going to be on Matt Waldman's RSP film room, one of his, and we're going to watch. We're going to watch Devontae Parker. So outside of those guys, I don't have big conclusions on any draft prospects right now. So
it's too early for that.
Yeah, you really set me up there. I don't appreciate it. But anyways, so going back to our questions here, this one comes in from @PapaPanthers. He's a guy who's followed me for a long time, and he asks us questions using the hashtag, which is hashtag hot takes and hot cakes. If you're going to ask questions, best place to do it is through that hashtag, so we can sort them very easily, especially if you ask them before Sunday. So he says, for my flex, Rashad Jennings or Alshon Jeffrey. You talked about Jennings earlier on the show, Dan, but do you have any difference of opinion now that Alshon Jeffrey's involved? Would you start?
I'm not going to bench Alshon Jeffrey. I'm not a big fan of benching guys like Jeffrey in general. I know he hasn't been as great for you lately. The Bears had the ball for like 20 minutes, I think, against the Packers, 20 meaningful minutes, so that was just kind of a product of really bad game flow. He still, I think, put together like close to 10 points PPR for sure over 10. So, I mean, listen, the Vikings are a better defense this year than they were last year, but this Bears offense should get it moving a little more this week. I mean, they are actually making more changes on their offensive line, and that's really been the problem for them, the switches on the offensive line and the breakdowns and protection for Cutler. But at the same time, they're home, and I think that they can get the offense moving a little bit. And Jeffrey's just one of those upside plays that, and granted, Jennings is not the worst call, especially because, like I mentioned earlier on the show, I think he'll have a bigger workload than the media is reporting right now. I think they're taking Coughlin's comments a little out of context. Not necessarily out of context. I think they haven't been around the team enough to know that Jennings, like when he says timeshare, I think he means more so Jennings won't be getting every single snap like he was getting earlier in the season, and it'll be more of an 80-20, 70-30 type thing. which is still a lot for NFL backs these days. I mean, guys like Shady McCoy haven't broken the 75% snap mark this season. So I like Jennings a little, but again, I'm rolling Jeffrey here on upside. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you just said about Jeffrey. He's a guy I don't want to bench pretty much ever unless if I can't help it. He's a great player, and I don't know. I still have faith in this offense. I'm probably wrong to do so, but I can't help it. I still think that at some point they'll get it turned around, and Jeffrey will benefit because of that. I could be wrong. I probably am, but in this situation, definitely for this week, I would go Jeffrey over Jennings. As for the rest of the season, that's a whole other question. At Wet and another question here from @wet_streams, which by the way is a great Twitter name.
Best Twitter name we've got by far.
That is definitely the best.
You win, sir.
Yeah.
11 weeks into the season, this is the best Twitter name we've had.
No doubt that that is great. He asks us, Jerick McKinnon or Alfred Blue, half-point PPR. Blue is someone we've touched on. We haven't talked about McKinnon yet. And I'll take this one first. I'm definitely going Blue over McKinnon. And I'm a little shocked to hear myself say that because this Bears defense is so bad. McKinnon could have a great game. And I definitely think McKinnon is way, way superior to Blue in talent. I actually don't really not even that high on Blue as a runner or anything as an NFL player. But I think he's going to get a ton of volume this week. He's definitely going to get the goal line carries, and that's what really breaks the tie for me. McKinnon is a guy who gets a lot of work in between the 20s, and then unjustly they trot out big fat Matt Asiata, and he takes the goal line carries and scores 3 times in one game, and McKinnon doesn't get to score a touchdown. And it's so frustrating to play McKinnon because he might have this great game and he won't score. Whereas I'm pretty confident that Blue is going to at least punch one into the end zone. And I think that's what breaks it for me, even though McKinnon could certainly run wild on this Bears defense. It's really poor. He could catch a few passes out of the backfield, maybe take a screen pass to the house like we saw Eddie Lacy do. Which, by the way, Eddie Lacy's work in the passing game makes no sense. Leo and I talked about that on the show Thursday, and I thought that was a good point by him. It really does boggle the mind. But anyways, McKinnon is a guy I like, but I'm going to start Blue over him this week. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, the call's Blue for me. There's a few key reasons. Matt touched on some of them. While McKinnon is for sure the better talent, I don't think it's even close, and I think he has a much better chance to break off, some 15-plus yard runs in this game, some decent runs. There's so many reasons to like Blue over him in this one. For starters, Blue is going to have a matchup where the Browns are going to have the Browns have lost. Is it Texans Browns, or am I going crazy, Matt? It's Texans Browns, right? Yeah. Okay. So the Browns just lost big nose tackle Phil Taylor to injured reserve, and if you look at the games where Taylor played this year, the run defense played much, much better. They were one of the worst run defenses in the league before his return. He was back. He helped them. He's out again. So it makes it more of a plus matchup for Blue there. And then you look at the other side of it. You've got McKinnon and the Vikings rushing attack against the Bears defense that really is bad, but not against the run. They still remain the top 15 unit in Pro Football Focus against the run. They're kind of set up to stop the run first, even though they've diverged a little from that and done some weird things to kind of mask the issues in their secondary and the injuries. They're still a decent run defense. Like I said, top 15, top 12 on Pro Football Focus. So this is not where you want to attack the Bears through the ground. So that's a negative. And then, like Matt said, it's just a workload thing. I mean, you asked me this question 3 weeks ago when McKinnon was getting 75% of the snaps and touches to Asiata, and Asiata was getting like 1/4 of the touches and snaps. Yeah, I might say McKinnon. But right now, Asiata, the last time the Vikings played, saw over 50% of the snaps and more touches than McKinnon and all the goal line stuff. So it's such a low ceiling now for McKinnon, and you're just hoping, okay, maybe he breaks the 60-yard touchdown run. Yeah, then you win the week with him. But that's just such a low risk. Low upside to me. I just see it such a unlikely chance that happens. Especially because the Bears even is playing solid. So yeah, for me, it's Blue all the way here.
Yeah, definitely. Blue is a pretty good play this week. And okay, another question from @TreeTree1234567. He asks us, who's a better backup for Gronk, Tim Wright or Jordan Reed? What do you think, Dan, between Wright and Reed?
Jordan Reed, and who's the other one?
Tim Wright, the
Tim
Patriots.
Wright. Oh, wow. Yeah, you got to go Reed here. Don't play Wright ever. I don't know. He doesn't he doesn't play that many snaps. He scores sometimes. Am I losing my mind, or did he play more finally in that Chiefs game? I got to check this up now. I'm sorry. I'm looking up his snap count from that last Chiefs game, because I know before that he had played like no snaps ever. Or I'm sorry, from the Patriots game.
Yeah, he had that one game against the Bengals where
he played 12 snaps again last game. So you don't ever want to start anybody in fantasy football who's playing under 25 snaps on offense. Even then, you really don't want to start him. That's like the Zach Ertz range of 25 to 30, and even then, it's not great. So, and he only played 12 last week, and that's like kind of consistent. So don't even come close to starting Wright. I mean, Reed has a chance to do something against this Tampa Bay defense. The matchup's great, so enjoy that. Reed's the easy call here for me. Matt, anything else to add to that?
I think it's Reed pretty easily. I mean, Wright would have some great upside if Gronk, missed a game. So in that sense, I guess it makes sense to have him as like a handcuff. But still, I think I'm still going to go with Reed. He's just the better player. Yeah, I think Reed's the guy, although I think he's kind of fading a little bit from what people sort of projected him to be this year. But, we'll see if he can turn around. Okay, so I'm going to ask now the question I just tagged you in it. Did you get that with the long list of options?
I didn't see the one with the option. I see 4 of 6. I just got the start from that was I need 4 of 6.
Okay, well, there's a picture in there, and it has his 6. Yeah, it has his 6 options.
Oh, there you go. Okay, I'm in.
Yeah, okay. And this one comes in from @YXE guy Jeff Jackson on Twitter, and he asks us, he needs 4 out of 6, but he's thinking he's basically weighing McKinnon or Blue. Yeah. So his running backs are Alfred Blue, Jamal Charles, Niall Davis, Andre Ellington, Mark Ingram, and Jerick McKinnon. So right off the bat, we're going to say, obviously, Jamal, Andre Ellington, and Mark Ingram are definite starts. So it is kind of that McKinnon or Blue debate, and we just kind of covered that we think it's Blue. Any love for Niall Davis there? Are you going to throw him in the 4th spot over those 2 guys?
No, definitely not Niall. Just bullet point for him why it's Blue, because he might not have been listening.
Sure.
One, Blue's has a much easier matchup now that Brown's nose tackle Phil Taylor's out for the season. Their run defense hasn't been as strong without him. 2, McKinnon's now a 50-50 split guy. He used to have about 75% of the snaps and touches. He splits all the snaps now, and he doesn't get goal line touches while Asiata does. And 3, the Bears' run defense has actually been pretty solid this season and pretty good as opposed to their pass defense. So, yeah, it's Blue here all the way.
Yep, definitely. Totally agree there. Okay, so we just got another question that just came in. Oh, wait, no, that's not for the show, but we can answer it anyways. Jordan Reed or Travis Kelce, and then Garcon, Kendall Wright, or Andre Johnson. I'll take this one right off the bat, and it's obviously Kelce, unless you're asking me Jimmy Graham.
It's obviously Kelce.
It's obviously Kelce. Kelce's like, I think, unless
you love Kelce. You love you some Kelce.
I love Travis Kelce. I mean, there's no question about that. He's a great player, and I think he actually has a really
a great man
with great hair. And I admire that. I'm actually not even having an optimal hair day, and I'm a little disappointed about that. But nobody cares about that. Well, people probably care. They shouldn't. But anyway, so back on the rails again. I think Kelce has a great matchup this week too. The Seahawks have allowed a lot of points to tight ends. Because Cam Chancellor isn't playing well as he did last year. He's dealing with some injuries. What's his name? Their middle linebacker, Bobby Wagner, has been banged up, and he's usually a guy they cover tight ends with. So I think Kelce has a really good chance to explode this week, even though he's always running limited routes because Andy Reid is crazy. I don't know and even Anthony was. I heard Anthony Fasano's not like 100%. He might not play. If he doesn't play, then the Chiefs are going to be forced to play Travis Kelce, as they should be doing anyway. So Kelce's a good call this week, and then I'm going to go with Garcon out of those 3 receivers. He has another great matchup against the Titans, who allow a ton of fantasy points to wide receivers. Bleedy Ray Wilson, I think we talked about him last week, matched up with Torrey Smith, and predictably he led up a pretty long touchdown to Torrey Smith. So I think it was like a 35-yard touchdown or something like that. And Garcon could have a similar game this week. He's a guy who's also really cheap on DraftKings and FanDuel, so try to get him into your daily lineups. I think Garcon's going to have a good game. So, Dan, do you have any takes on that question? Any different thoughts?
I'm kind of the same way with you. I'm going matchup with Garcon, so that's just how I see it. I think you got to stick with the matchup there. I don't love Garcon from a bulk standpoint, but I just think he's going to have some good opportunity, especially now that Altaron Werner is ruled out.
Well, yeah, right. I don't know what I was thinking there. I was thinking of a different game.
Wait, am I thinking of the wrong game there?
No, you're right. I don't know why I mentioned the Titans cornerback. Oh, because he roasted that one Titans cornerback earlier this year.
TJ Wilson, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, my bad about that. But either way, I mean, that just makes it even better. Titans,
yeah, Tampa's even better.
Tampa Bay is even worse against
right, better matchup-wise.
Definitely. Okay, so just going to scroll through the hashtag really quick. We've got a few questions there. Like we said, this is the easiest way to ask us questions. First one comes in from @MrJuneJune11. He asks us, who should I start in my flex? Tate, and that's Golden Tate versus Arizona, Terrance West versus Houston, or Blue versus Cleveland. What are you thinking here out of Golden Tate, Terrance West, or Alfred Blue?
This is a tough one, I would say, just because of the fact that, it's hard for me to go away from Golden Tate. He's been so consistent this year. Even with Calvin back last week, he was just a PPR monster, racking up underneath stuff, taking the ball after the catch and making things happen. He's really an underrated talent. I had him targeted in all my fantasy leagues this year. I actually traded him 2 leagues at the deadline, before the deadline a few weeks earlier, just because I was trying to sell high when Calvin was back, and I got some decent returns on both trades. But there is no such thing. I don't know if there's such thing as selling high. While the touchdowns might not be there as consistently going forward, the catches and yards will. But at the same time, Terrance West is just really an interesting guy to look at just in general because he's starting to become the lead back there. Touches would tell you that, but I don't know. I shouldn't even say that because obviously it's just a guess who's going to get it. I do think they're kind of riding him right now, though, with the hot hand type thing. So I'm not, as you can tell, I'm not too bullish. I'm not too set in stone on this one. I don't have too good of a take, but I'm going Tate because I think it's the safest option. I think there's still some upside there. Do you see it differently?
Yeah, definitely. I think Tate is a good call. I would probably if you haven't checked it out yet and you're watching the show, Golden Tate was the reception receiver this week. So I ran through his most recent game with Calvin Johnson in, and I kind of came away with some inconclusive, some non-conclusion conclusions because while that volume was still there last week, is it still going to be there going forward? And it's really interesting. This was probably the most interesting study I've done this season on Tate. So I really encourage people to check that out because you didn't really some of the data kind of contradicted each other. It was really interesting to look at. So I'll tweet it out again after the show is over if you haven't seen it yet. But anyway, so I still think Tate is a strong option this week.
And what about Blue? Do you even consider him here?
No, I think I don't know. You mentioned the Cleveland backfield, and it is super hard to predict. I really like West much more as a player, again, than Blue. I kind of wish I knew that West was going to get all that workload. I think I'm going to go West over Blue this week, just because
But Tate is the final call of these three, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, me too.
Same thing you asked us. And last question we'll answer during this section of questions, and TJ is going to be on with me later to answer a few questions. And where did that question go? Okay, yeah, this one came in from @MStephanie71. Michael Stephanie, another one of our loyal listeners. He asked us, 1, Larry Danell or Kyle Rudolph in a PPR, or 2, Julian Edelman, Theo Riddick, Bryant, and Andre Johnson in a PPR, and I'm assuming that's Des Bryant.
No, I think it's Martavis because Des is on the bye.
Oh, duh. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Anyway, so first let's take the first question. Larry Danell or Kyle Rudolph this week? I don't know. Do we know for sure if Rudolph is playing or not? I know he's practicing.
Rudolph's definitely going to play. He practiced every week. I shouldn't say definitely. He's listed as probable.
Right.
Assuming that he will play. your guess is as good as mine was rolling this offense in his first week back and how healthy he is. I think he's really healthy, though. I'm kind of mad I didn't pick him up in one league where I had Larry Danell as my starting tight end. So Danell has really somewhat phased out of this Giants offense. He doesn't make too many plays now over the middle and the seams that I thought they would kind of utilize him for when he started to get hot. I don't know what the reasoning for that is, especially because Ruben Randall's not playing well. They don't really have anyone to throw to but Beckham, Odell Beckham, the rookie. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. He's still a red zone guy, though. I mean, he had a touchdown in the red zone a couple weeks ago. He still gets a lot of targets down there, so he has that upside for a tight end. But then you've got Rudolph, who's supposed to be a big red zone guy for them too, and we think that this Bears defense will surrender a lot of yards and a lot of points and give up a lot of points. So I think the move is Rudolph here. I don't think Danell has enough of a floor to be like it's a safer play to go Danell. I think he's still kind of a less of a bulk guy and more of a big play guy, and big play in the sense of big points per play, like a touchdown type catch, that type of thing with Danell. So yeah, I'm going Rudolph here. It's a risk, but I think he's got just as good of a role, and they should be scoring more. How do you see it, Matt?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going to go with Rudolph too. A great matchup this week, against the Bears. He could definitely score one of those, Kyle Rudolph touchdowns. He's a big end zone guy. So I like that. Shaking the chance on that upside over Danell, who you're right he's kind of fading from this offense. And then the second one, Edelman, Riddick, Bryant, or Andre Johnson. So I think Martellus Bryant is kind of developed into an every week start. I mean, the upside is just too tremendous. Now they are playing the Titans, and he should see a lot of the cornerbacks that we talked about earlier, which I was mistakenly talking about Pierre Garçon with. Bryant has a chance to catch a deep pass there. And out of these other three, I guess Edelman's probably the safest bet. But I really want to get Theo Riddick in my lineups because it's a PPR league. I think he has, easy running back 2 upside in a PPR league. Reggie Bush is not supposed to play. That was the talk all week that he wasn't going to be in. And I think Bush is pretty much an equal player to Riddick is pretty much an equal player to Bush at this point. So I don't know. It's tough. I can't really decide. I think I might go Riddick over Edelman.
Is it one of these 4?
No, it's 2 of these. Two of these
4. Okay.
So Bryant is the one that I definitely want.
Bryant Riddick.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go Bryant Riddick.
Okay, wow. So we're definitely different on this one. So I love Bryant, and I think he's got weekly upside, but a ton of weekly upside. I think they should be able to throw with ease in this matchup, but he's still only playing 60% of the snaps on offense, and I think that's something that I need to take into consideration. I'm looking back at this Lions offense and the games where Bush has been out or where Bush has been injured and not been able to play, and Riddick sees about 31 snaps and somewhat very close, like 50% of the snaps. So it's kind of a similar snap count with Bryant and Riddick. I'll start by mentioning that Julian Edelman's my lock play. I touched on him extensively earlier. I think that game's going to be very high scoring. I think we'll see a lot of Greg Toller, Colts second cornerback, and Toller's given up the most yards per snap over the last of the last month of the season of any cornerback in the league. 2 touchdowns, a bunch of yards and receptions. So he's really burnable, and they'll probably have, just based on the matchups, Vontae Davis, their premier cornerback, will be matched up with LaFell. But yeah, if you want to hear more on Edelman, just go back in the show and rewatch one of the earlier questions. But yeah, between Riddick and Bryant for me, because like I mentioned, I'm still a little nervous about this Texans offense with Ryan Mallett. We haven't seen him. I think he can be pressured and forced into some bad throws and some ground balls, like throws that just end up bouncing before they get to the receiver. I've seen a lot of that throughout his preseason career. So yeah, it's Riddick or Bryant, and I think they're going to play a similar amount of the snaps. I think the Steelers will have a lot of success passing the ball. I think Riddick will be a big part of the game plan, though, for the Lions. So for me, I'm rolling with Riddick here. I just think he's safer. Bryant still strikes me as a guy who's going to split a little bit of snaps with Whedon. And you never know if the Titans kind of try to mimic what the Jets did on defense last week. They also run a 3-4, so I guess they could potentially do it. But I don't know if they have the personnel. Not that the Jets have great defensive personnel right now anyway. But yeah, that alarmed me. Maybe it's something that we shouldn't take too much into consideration, but they did just get stopped. And Riddick has never been stopped when Bush has been out. So I think it's safer to go with Riddick. So I'm going Riddick and Edelman here.
Yeah, well, the Steelers, they're a pretty easy organization to figure out. They play down to their competition like they did with the Jets last week, and you could make the case that they're going to do that against the Titans, who are a bad team. But it's a primetime game. The Steelers never sit down on primetime, because they're such a reputable organization. But anyways, so I guess that's it for questions right now. So we can go ahead and break down a few of these games. I know you wanted to do the Packers and Eagles. If you want to start off with that one, go right ahead.
Yeah, so aside from this Colts-Patriots game that we're obviously telling you to target in daily leagues, I think there's another game we want you to target. It's the Packers and Eagles. So Mark Sanchez last week is becoming really my favorite guy in fantasy. Let me just ask you a quick question before we get into this, Matt, and then I'll break down this matchup. I got two start-sit questions that I'm going to need your help on.
Okay.
First one is, in my deep league where the waiver wire is as barren as you can imagine, as I can't think of a good analogy off the top of my head. I have a lot of options there, but I just didn't take any of them. A lot of them were more dirty than.
I was gonna say there's no appropriate option.
I had some options are a bear in comparison. I didn't want to get into, but then my mind just started racing in that direction. And I just decided, all right, we'll cut it off. But anyway, I've got to go with Marcus Whedon, Brandon Oliver, Carlos Hyde. I think it gets even grosser after that. So Marcus Whedon against Tennessee secondary, Brandon Oliver with no role in sight, I don't think, against the Oakland Raiders. He had 25 snaps in his last game of the Chargers, and that was without Ryan Matthews. Or Carlos Hyde against the Giants. Do you have anything to tell me there?
Sorry. That's all, no, but seriously. I guess Hyde
over Whedon?
Just because, I mean, Oliver's the one that's like he has no. We got to see what it looks like, with Ryan Matthews back, whether he goes into like a Danny Woodhead sort of role.
Open.
Yeah, right. And I mean, it is against Oakland, so. But I really just after the way the Giants got run over by the Seahawks, I really want to see if the 49ers can replicate that formula. It seems like they go through this on offense every year where they try to be like this high-flying passing offense, and then I swear to God we hear every year with the 49ers, they're going to get back to basics now and run Kaepernick and get the running back. I heard that again this week. I was like, we hear this every year with this team. They do this every year. They really just need to understand their identity, and that's as a running team. And Hyde looks great. He looks really good. He could probably break off a long run or score a touchdown, and Wheaton is kind of you're hoping for the same thing, but I still see him as kind of the third option in that, maybe even fourth behind Heath Miller. He could be even fifth, behind Le'Veon Bell. How much they throw to him?
Right.
He's just not guaranteed a lot of targets. Hyde's not really guaranteed a lot of work either, but I see the matchup just as a little bit better.
All right, and then this will lead into me breaking down the Eagles and Packers. But do I go with the Chise, who's becoming my boy really, really fast this season, and I have him rolling out in my two main leagues? Potentially, unless you change my mind on this one. Or Teddy Bridgewater against the Bears defense.
I think you go with Sanchez. Sigmund Bloom, I think, had said it on one of the podcasts this week, said Sanchez is kind of like the Vicky Mendoza line. Like anything under the, he's kind of the one. He's a breaking point. In all the good options, it's like, is he better or worse than Sanchez? And I think Bridgewater falls under that line.
I like that.
It's going to kind of be that line of breaking points for your quarterbacks. But he's a really good option.
Yeah,
good option.
I think, like I said just a minute ago, this is one of the matchups you guys want to target in your daily leagues. Sanchez was able to put up 20 points last week. I think it was 21 points, standard league points, with only 58 offensive snaps. That's nothing like what the Eagles have been reeling off this season. They had 88 the week before, I think, or 90 the week before, and 86 the week before that. They're averaging upwards of 80, but they were averaging over 80 plays a game before the Panthers game, so that was kind of just an anomaly. And if he's able to put up 21 points in 58 offensive snaps, and the week before against the Texans in relief duty, he was able to put up 12 point, I think it was like almost 13 points in 66 snaps. I think we'll get back to around 80 this week, or at least 75, and I think that's just makes him an even safer bet for points. Obviously, Packers defense is much better than the Panthers or even the Texans, which he's faced lately. And they made a nice and a really interesting personnel decision last week. They moved Clay Matthews to inside linebacker. where they think he can kind of be even better player. And in the first glance, it really, really worked against the Bears. It was a really interesting move. We'll see if that can continue to pay dividends. That's the one thing that scares me about Sanchez in this Eagles offense. But aside from that, I think you can roll out Macklin, and I think you can roll out Jordan Matthews with some decent, what's it called? What are the word? Confidence. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. But some confidence. And listen, if McCoy can't get going this week, Jesus, I don't know what to do about this guy, and there's something really wrong with him. I was working the waiver wire. My league had trade deadlines in all my leagues this week. So one of the best experiences in fantasy football was I had a long, hour-long call with my boy TJ about this. Not TJ Hernandez, who will be on the show, another one of my friends. And we were like, the last day before the waiver wire, that Friday, is one of the greatest times. You're just working your phone. You're getting texts back and forth. People are slandering you in the league. Don't trade with this guy. Did you see the last rip-off he made? Like, you can't make this trade. People are texting other people for advice in the league. It's one of the best experiences in fantasy football, the trade deadline. So I was working the wire. I got off 2 deals, none of them involving McCoy. I was trying to target Shady McCoy. I felt the bad game against the Panthers defense would work in my favor, especially because a lot of people perceive the Panthers have a bad defense. And granted, their secondary is a misery, but they've actually been pretty decent against the run, the Panthers, especially at home, which is why I don't love Steven Jackson in his matchup, but we'll touch on that when Matt breaks down this game. But yeah, so this is different. The Packers' run defense has not been good this year. It's been really, really bad. So McCoy, you should really get going in this one. So I like McCoy this week in my daily leagues. I really do. I'm taking another chance on him. On the other side of the ball, Eagles' defense is much better this year. We have to give them credit. They're really rushing the passer really well, and that's the big difference. They were, a bottom 10 pass rush team last year, and now they're a top 5 unit. Connor Barwin's gotten going. Trent Cole's having a really good year. They get production from a lot of different guys there, and they're really joining in and accepting Billy Davis's scheme and system and buying into it, and you're seeing great results there. So I don't think the matchup is as good for Rodgers as other people do. Yeah, he'll get off a lot of plays and a lot of volume, but I don't know. I like the Eagles' defense a lot more this year, so I think I'm less bullish on my Packers and Eagles here. Do you have any thoughts on this matchup, or are you targeting it in DFS or not?
Yeah, I'm pretty much targeting everybody here, and while I do think the Eagles' defense has improved, their outside cornerbacks still aren't very good. So I think that leads to a lot of points for Rodgers, who's pretty much, he's unstoppable, and especially with how much they're going to throw the ball this week. I mean, you want Rodgers, obviously. Like, if you're playing, I really think it's easy to get him into your lineups for DFS this week and go for some values elsewhere. And then you have the outside receivers are Jordy Nelson and Devontae Adams. I think I'm going to go back to Devontae Adams, even though he disappointed in a blowout last week. I have him in a few places just because he's super cheap. And yeah, I mean, you want to, like I said, like we've been saying, you want to break ties in favor of getting these guys in your lineups in this game. And yeah, I think Lacy's a good play, and McCoy should be a good play, but it's been so frustrating. It's kind of a wait and see thing with him. But yeah, so I guess we can move on to the next game as we decided we're going to do Panthers and Falcons. And look, I mean, these are 2 really bad teams, 2 really bad defenses with some players on offense that you can look to get out there. Cam right now is a sad state of affairs. I kind of probably want to look for different options in daily, and I don't know if you have a better option than Newton in your standard, week or yearly season-long leagues, but if you do, maybe you think about it because this offense is just such a mess around him, and he looks beat up and he looks worn out, from having to carry this team, and it really is an unfair assignment that they've sent him on, and he looks like he's feeling the burdens of it. I really think this is going to kind of be a lost year for Newton. I thought that before the season, and then it looks like he played well enough to kind of trick me, change my mind, but now it looks like it's back to more of what I expected. Just kind of a lost. Who knows what's going to, nothing good is going to come from this year. So Newton, I mean, you kind of look for other options. Benjamin, you probably have to play just because he sees so much volume and and makes plays in garbage time, even though he makes a lot of mistakes too. Olsen is always reliable. You can always play him. The running backs are disgusting. I mean, they're pretty gross right now. I broke down the running backs for this week for Black and Blue Review because it's really sad. The player that D'Angelo Williams is right now, he's just not good at all anymore. He's just looks like a shell of himself out there. He's done, and he looks like he's really bothered by how much backfield penetration there is, and there's a ton of that in Carolina right now because the line is so bad. And then you look at Jonathan Stewart, who's making the most of every run he gets. He might be only getting these 4 or 3 yard runs, but he's getting the most out of them where he should be stopped in the backfield. He just keeps driving his legs, keeps finishing his runs, and really kind of is creating holes on his own, whereas Williams is just following the path that's there and is falling down on first contact. So Stewart's a much better option right now. So if you're going to pick a Carolina back, he's probably the one you want, even though he might not see the volume that you need because the coaching staff is still starting Williams. They're being a little stubborn about that. So if you're going to pick and this is a great matchup, so if you're going to pick a Carolina back, it's got to be Stewart because he's the most likely one to score. And then you look on the Atlanta side, you want to, Matt Ryan kind of let you down last week in a good matchup, but I think you still go back to him. You still go back to Roddy White. And Julio Jones, he had a great game, although he didn't score a touchdown. That touchdown trend has got to reverse itself at some point. And for $7,000 on DraftKings, I'm still playing him in a lot of places. And he should have a great game against this Carolina secondary, which is really bad. And that's pretty much it for the Atlanta offense. You don't want to go with any of their running backs ever unless you are desperate. And there's no tight end to speak of. So Atlanta's offense is pretty easy to break down. Dan, do you have any different takes in this game?
No, I see it the same way. I'm just a little worried about the fact that Cam Newton's injured, and I don't know how that's going to affect him. I guess he's been playing through this injury, right?
Yeah, he has. But and the team won't even admit that he's injured. They're kind of saying he's not hurt. Cam is saying he is hurt. Maybe it's just a difference of words, but it's kind of an ugly situation with him right now.
Yeah, I think the difference in this matchup could be the fact that Atlanta pass rush kind of came alive last week, which was such a surprising thing to see for us. They had been so bad all season before their bye week, and it was really just like a defense that you thought would never get pressure. Then last week they got 6 sacks. Ozu Manura had 2. Court Bierman had 3, and he hasn't had any sacks. He's just been a misery all season. He had like 6 other hurries. They had Jonathan Babineau step in, playing the 3 technique. So when they kind of used some more schemes, they used a lot of 4-3 looks. It looked like. So I don't know. I think they got some more pressure in different ways, the Falcons, and that worries me when it comes to the Panthers because that's what's shutting them down. It's this offensive line. We've talked about it all season. So I think that I don't trust Cam in this one as much as other people do. I know a lot of people were writing about Cam as a nice daily play this week. At least I saw it all over my Twitter. So that's my only take, that I'm just not very bullish on Cam.
Yeah, it's a rough situation with Cam, and I can sit here and bloviate and go on and on about Carolina right now, but I won't. I'll save that. But anyways, we got TJ in with us now. Dan, I know you got to run here. Do you have any other burning player takes, matchups that you want to fire off before you run?
Nothing else. We touched on a lot of the good ones. Unfortunately, I got to go watch the Giants get run on for 275 to 312 yards, and I just came up with a random number in the freezing cold of MetLife Stadium. But hopefully, I'll get to cheer my team a little bit. Yeah.
Tell Odell Beckham we need some touchdowns from him.
I will actually walk down onto the field, TJ, and tell him that.
Let him know. Thank you.
I don't think you need to tell Odell Beckham that. He's so great, he'll do it on his own.
Here we go.
Tell Eli that Odell needs touchdowns.
All right, I'll tell Eli just to target Odell because right now it's all about TJ's fantasy team, and that's kind of how it should be for the Giants right now. The focus should be on TJ's fantasy team. And listen, I'm not even sure I don't mind that because at this point we're looking at draft picks. Anyway, I've said enough. It's time to get out of here. Enjoy, guys. You guys will have TJ and Matt for the rest of the show. TJ is Matt's favorite check down receiver, as we can obviously read. This is a new one. I like this one.
I can't see it.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, he'll talk daily with you, and they'll wrap up some matchups. Have a good week 11, guys. See you later, guys.
All right, see you later, Dan. Okay, TJ.
What is up?
It's me and you for the rest of the show. So.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah. All right. So. Dan and I have talked. I don't know if you're watching it all, but we talked a lot about a lot of different things here and there. We kind of got into the Green Bay and Green Bay Eagles game, and I talked a little sadness on the Panthers and Falcons game. So, what are your burning takes that you got to get off your chest this week? I'll let you just kind of have the floor here.
I'm super excited about the show this week because obviously the guys over at DraftKings listen to our show, and they tightened up their salaries after my rant last week. So it's really cool to know that they listen to us.
Definitely, I'm flattered.
That's really exciting, you know. So yeah, I'm flattered too. So it's cool that they're listening to us and they tighten up the salaries so we can have a good experience this week. No, but yeah, if you want to just jump into some plays on the daily sites this week, it's a super interesting week because a lot of my top values kind of overlap across both sites. So I have a pretty risky week going this week because I have a lot of players going across the board. Usually that's not the case just because you want to account for the scoring differences on the sites, but there's quite a few players that are priced really low on both sites. Some examples. Jeremy Hill is he's coming off of a rough game last week. He's only $4,500 on DraftKings, and on FanDuel he's $6,500, so a little bit cheaper on DraftKings, but he's a guy that frees up a lot of salary for you. Really interesting if you look at the running backs on FanDuel. If you're kind of looking at that mid-range tier, you have Shane Vereen, Jeremy Hill, C.J. Anderson, all priced at the same price point. So you have quite a decision to make there. On FanDuel, I'm kind of leaning Jeremy Hill just because I think he's going to get the bulk of the carries in that game, even though Cincinnati is a pretty big road underdog, which is something I kind of try to avoid with my running back just because they could kind of get lost in the game script a little bit. I still really like C.J. Anderson, especially for GPPs. I don't think Monte Ball is going to cut too much into his touches. I came on a little later. I don't know if you guys got into the Denver St. Louis matchup. Do you have a take on
we haven't yet.
CJ and Monte? Maybe we can go deeper into it when we get into the matchups.
Yeah, definitely. I really like CJ this week, and I just was scrolling through my timeline right before you came on, and it said he's, who knows how much this really matters, but they did say that he's named the starter. Yeah, I mean, I'm a guy that follows, my own kind of evaluations and stuff like that, and sometimes that can lead you into problems, but I mean, CJ is just definitely the better runner than Monte Ball. Like, he's just a better all-around player.
So for sure.
You would think if they followed logic that it would be Anderson. But who knows with John Fox.
Obviously, you never know with the coach speak, but they said Monte Ball could be in line anywhere from like 8 to 10 touches.
Mm-hmm.
Even if he does get those 10 touches, I still think there's room for C.J. Anderson to get over 15 touches. They're big favorites against St. Louis. That game could get out of hand quick. We could see something similar to what we saw in Oakland last week. So I like C.J. Anderson. I don't on FanDuel. It didn't work out that I have any of those mid-tier guys in my cash games, but in GPPs, I think Anderson and Vereen both have a little bit more upside than Jeremy Hill. You guys were touching on Jerick McKinnon a little bit right before I came on. In daily, he's super cheap. He's only $5,500 on FanDuel, and on DraftKings he's $4,800. As far as snaps go, they're getting pretty close to a 50-50 split, but between him and Matt Asiata. But if you look at the last 4 games, McKinnon's still averaging 18 touches a game. And when I'm looking for some cheap running back options, I'm gonna look for touches in my daily games. Touches obviously correlate most to fantasy points for running backs, something that Chris Raybon from 4for4 has really touched on a lot this season. So at that cheap price point, you're not going to find a guy that's going to get you 18 plus touches in a game. Chicago's been a mess lately. We've seen what's transpired with their defense the last couple weeks. Their whole team overall, really. Asiata's going to vulture those goal line carries, but Jerick McKinnon could easily be a guy that can get you 100 total yards on 18 touches. So for that price point, he gives you quite a bit of salary relief and frees you up to if you play McKinnon, you might be able to squeeze a guy like Matt Forte in on FanDuel, who he's not crazy expensive on FanDuel, Matt Forte. He's 9,300 compared to some guys like Jamal Charles, 87. I think Le'Veon's 86. Over on DraftKings, I don't see myself getting someone like Forte into any of my lineups. He's priced at 10,100 on DraftKings. That's really expensive. The last few weeks for cash games, DraftKings, you've kind of needed all your players to return 3 times value, which is pretty insane. 3 times was kind of what you might look for in some smaller GPPs maybe last year, but with soft pricing, cash lineups on DraftKings have been approaching GPP scores just to cash. With the tighter pricing this week, I think kind of that 2 to 2.5 times value will return value in cash games this week, just because the pricing is pretty tight. But those are kind of some of the main running back values I'm looking at. Le'Veon and Jamal are both priced pretty similarly on both sites. I think it's just kind of a preference there. They're both really high floor guys. They have similar matchups. I lean Le'Veon a little bit more just because Pittsburgh's favored by 5.5, while KC's only favored by 1, and a little bit lower over under. One guy that I'm fading, even though he's going to be ridiculously cheap in salaries, Alfred Blue. I don't want a piece of that. The matchup's a little bit better than some of the other cheap guys, but I can see a situation with Ryan Maladin and that low over under. They have a really low projected total by Vegas. I can see a situation where he gives us something like 50 yards and 1 catch or something, and I really don't want any piece of that, even at that super cheap price point. I think his upside's really limited if you just look at that Vegas over-under.
He has to score pretty much. So.
He has to score, and he's going to be so highly owned in both GPPs and cash games. You usually don't look at player percentages too much in cash games, but I mean, if you can get someone that's relatively cheap, like I've mentioned, someone like Jeremy Hill or McKinnon, so many people are going to be on Alfred Blue that if your cheap running back is hitting in those cash games and someone else isn't, you kind of have an inherent advantage in those games. Wide receiver, kind of similar across the board. What you'll see a lot is when those prices come out on Monday night, you'll end up with some really good values. So the glaring example of that this week is Kelvin Benjamin. His price didn't move much because they played that Monday night game, so he's still priced only at 4,900 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's priced at 6,600. So he's a guy that I'm really breaking one of my rules this week. Usually I kind of limit my exposure to between 60 and 70% on a player. I have Kelvin Benjamin in 100% of my lineups this week because he is so cheap, and I'm going single lineup on FanDuel just because prices are so tight. There's not a ton of ways to go. So another rarity for me. I'm going single lineup. So Kelvin Benjamin in all my cash game lineups this week. An interesting cheap wide receiver option that I'm looking at this week is Andrew Hawkins. He's been out with some type of leg injury. Was it a thigh? I don't remember. But he's coming back this week. Houston ranks 31st, adjusted for strength of schedule. They rank 31st against wide receivers, and they are the second worst team in the league. You've heard me harp on this stat a bunch. Fantasy Outsiders. Yards against type of receivers. They're second worst in the league against number 1 wide receivers. Jordan Cameron's out when Hawkins has been in. He's been the most targeted guy in that offense. It's $5,300 on FanDuel and $4,100 on DraftKings. I'll have a lot more of him on FanDuel just because on DraftKings we have Pierre Garçon at that $4,000 price point with that really nice matchup. So with Garçon at 4,000, it's kind of hard to play someone like Hawkins because I think I think the whole Washington offense is in play this week. I think you guys have you guys touched on that matchup yet?
No, actually we haven't. That was one I was gonna.
Okay, we'll get a little deeper into that, but that whole offense is really in play. I don't have RG3 in any of my cash games just because I think it's a really nice week to pay up for quarterbacks. They all the top quarterbacks have pretty similarly projected Vegas totals this week. What I did is I kind of just went on FanDuel and DraftKings and picked the cheapest option because I think they're all pretty much interchangeable. So sorry, Breeze on FanDuel and at 8,300 and Rodgers at 9,400 on DraftKings. Like I said, just take the value at that top quarterback. There's no reason to pay an extra $1,000 when they're all pretty much interchangeable. But back to RG3, the RG3 Deshaun stack I like a lot. And all my other lineups, GPP lineups, even cash game lineups, Garcon is a high floor, high ceiling guy with that matchup. Tampa Bay is awful against the pass. 32nd against wide receivers adjusted for strength of schedule. Even Alfred Morris, I probably won't play him in too many cash games just because you never know what you might get with that Washington backfield. But again, Washington's favored by 7 at home. Heavy home favorites are usually pretty good targets for your daily running backs, just because that favorable game script could see them, near the goal line a lot, and kind of that grinded down towards the end of the game with a big lead. As far as tight ends go, it's pretty much a pay up for tight end week this week on FanDuel. Gronk and Graham are priced pretty similarly. Gronk at 8,100, Graham at 7,900. They're so close that you can kind of if you want to diversify the way I did it on FanDuel, I went Gronk since they're basically the same price, and then there's a $900 difference on DraftKings. So Jimmy Graham in my cash lineups over there gives you a little diversification. They're both obviously great GPP options. It's kind of hard to get a pulse on what ownership percentages are going to be since FanDuel took those Thursday ownership percentages off a couple weeks ago. So it's kind of hard to gauge which one is going to be higher owned. Listening to some of the Roto Grinder stuff and whatnot, it sounds like they think Gronk's going to be the higher owned player. That's kind of weird to me. Usually when you have players of similar caliber, the higher owned guy will be the one that's cheaper, just because people kind of want to target that value. So again, I just kind of diversified across my GPP lineups and wherever they fit in, just kind of try to get equal exposure to them. In cash games,
it's fun. Real quick, sorry to interrupt, but it's real funny that you mentioned the way you did that on FanDuel. You went with Gronk because the price difference isn't that bad, and then I did the same thing. Mostly Gronk on FanDuel, and then mostly Graham on DraftKings, just because of that price split. In a few places I do have Kelsey too, because that matchup is so good and he's so cheap. Actually, in a few lineups I put him in my flex, just because I paid up for a lot of the Rodgers and Nelson stack. That then I went with the and then I went with one of those elite tight ends. Then I put then it made sense to put Kelsey in because he's so cheap.
I've been toying with that a little bit too, with a tight end at the stack in a GPP, and I was gonna get into Kelsey with Fasano. It looks like he's listed as questionable still, but he didn't practice all week.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely, I have Kelsey in a cash game lineup on DraftKings. Also, Jordan Reed is only $3,300 on DraftKings. I think he might end up being pretty highly owned, so he's going to be fine in cash games. Again, I think that whole Washington offense is in play. If you want to go for an interesting little pivot play on at tight end, like I said, I think Jordan Reed's going to be pretty highly owned because obviously that's a great matchup. On FanDuel, he and Vernon Davis are the same price. On DraftKings, Vernon Davis is $300 cheaper. Vernon Davis has been pretty much invincible this year besides that 2-touchdown game, but the Giants rank 30th against tight ends when adjusted for strength of schedule. I think he's so cheap that you're not losing much if he doesn't hit. you obviously want all your guys to hit in a GPP, but again, it's that kind of pivot play off of a similarly priced player. So many people are going to be on Jordan Reed that you can kind of go for that, just target that great matchup and hope he hits. I mean, in GPPs, you're going to end up with some uncomfortable plays, and he's obviously one. But you know, we know the kind of upside he has, and plug him in, and hopefully in a favorable matchup with as favorites, he can kind of he can hit for you, and he'll definitely be one of those super low percentage guys. You know, if you want to go contrarian. And then finally, if you kind of just looking at defenses, my top defensive plays are Cleveland, Denver, and Washington. On FanDuel, if you're playing GPPs, I think so many people are going to be on Denver that if you want to go for a little pivot play, Cleveland and Denver are priced the same. So again, I see a situation where Denver could legitimately be owned 5 times as much as Cleveland defense in tournaments, just because it's such a great matchup. But they're not 5 times as likely to get a pick 6 or turn in a 15-point game. So you just inherently get a lot of value just by playing the different defense. No defense is likely to score 15 points, even with a cake matchup. So a nice little pivot play is Cleveland in your GPPs. I'm still rolling out Denver in my cash games if I have room. Washington, if I need to save a couple bucks. A really sneaky cheap defense is Atlanta. Carolina's been, they're a bad defense, but Carolina's O-line has been so bad, and just that team has been so bad. And they've given up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing defenses. It's a division game, and you really never know what's going to happen in those division matchups. But Cam's sack rate, his completion percentage, they're all near the bottom of the league. Their pass block grade on Pro Football Focus is again near the bottom of the league. When I'm kind of targeting a high upside defense, you can't really predict turnovers, but you can predict quarterback pressures pretty well, and that usually correlates closest to turnovers. So I think they have a chance to get after Cam just with his busted ankles, his busted O-line, his busted run game, his lack of weapons, Kelvin's drops. It can add up. It can add up to a good game for Atlanta, although their pass rush ranks near the bottom of the league. Carolina's inefficiencies could help them out a little bit there. So for the most part, those are some of my top values.
Yeah, it's a real black hole of bad, that whole matchup.
Yeah, it really is.
2 defenses you didn't mention that I've kind of have at a few places. In FanDuel, when I wanted to go really cheap, I've gone with the Saints defense. And I've tried to do this several weeks, and it hasn't worked out. But I still think against Andy Dalton in the Dome, I think that they could, potentially get a few turnovers. They're not a good defense, and I think Keenan Lewis, I don't know if he's going to play or not. He had that nasty-looking leg picture. I don't know. I hadn't heard officially if he's playing or not. But still, that's one that I'm looking at. And then Arizona, you didn't mention them, but on draft, and pretty much just on DraftKings because they're cheap. And Leo actually talked me into this on the Fantasy Game Plan show on Wednesday. I wasn't thinking it, but then just because I'm going Denver in a lot of places and Arizona kind of if I need just that extra $200, just because they don't have a great matchup against Detroit, but I still think Stafford is pretty turnover prone, and of all the defenses in the league, I think if a gun to my head, I had to put which defense is going to score a touchdown this week, I would almost always predict Arizona because they just have those players.
That's a really fair point, and I have them graded right there with Atlanta. It's interesting. A lot of people think of Detroit as this high-powered, high-flying offense. So I think that could also be an interesting little pivot play. If you look at the Vegas line, Detroit's only projected for 19.5 points, which is crazy low. So yeah, that's definitely a good call. New Orleans is an interesting one. They're favored by 7 at home, and coming off of that ugly game, the Bengals. I've been kind of struggling. Like I said, Jeremy Hill's a great matchup, but I don't have a ton of exposure to him across all my cash game lineups. On DraftKings, I kind of made it a point to get an AJ Green lineup rather than a Jeremy Hill lineup because AJ Green's such a good value on DraftKings. In your cash game lineups, you generally don't want a running back and wide receiver from the same team. So at $6,000 with AJ Green, I made sure I had a lineup with him instead of Jeremy Hill. On that point of AJ Green, if you are playing some GPPs and he is a super obvious value, I was kind of joked before Dan left, told him to make sure ODB gets us some touchdowns. But AJ Green and Odell Beckham are the same price on DraftKings. I think if people are in that price range, they're gonna go to AJ Green just because of the name value. If you look at the red zone targets, though, Odell Beckham is near the top of the league in red zone targets per game. He's averaging 1.4 red zone targets per game. Anything over 1 is pretty high mark. But if you look at his red zone conversion rate, I think it's a little under 30%, which is pretty low for compared to some of the other players in the league. So you might see some positive regression there. If you see a guy with high red zone targets and low conversion rate, sometimes that means he can be due for some scores. He's been doing well, but he's so heavily targeted in the red zone that he can be a guy that can get you a 2-touchdown game even in a poor matchup. So if you want to make a little pivot play there, Odell Beckham's another nice pivot play off AJ Green on DraftKings.
Definitely. And two little kind of pieces of breaking news, or three actually, that I have over here. Keenan Lewis is going to play. We were just talking about that. He's active.
Yeah.
And also, Anthony Fasano is inactive. That affects Travis Kelce. And the third piece of news is that DraftKings is not working right now. So that's kind of going around.
Sweet.
Yeah, there.
All right. Well, we got an hour and a half, and I got lineups to put in. Oh, it isn't working. That's awesome.
Yeah.
They must have paid up for FanDuel servers or something.
Terrific. So that's one thing that we have to worry about. Okay, we kind of get out of here soon, but one question we got while we were on the show, and this one comes in from @BallIsTim, Tim Evans, one of our loyal listeners, and he asked you specifically, but also addressing the group, what stacks for GPPs on FanDuel this week? What are the best? What stacks are you working with in tournaments on FanDuel?
Sure. Again, this week the top quarterbacks have such good matchups. They're all projected for such high team point totals that I kind of really just went down the list and just kind of picked off those top quarterbacks this week just because they have such good matchups. And if I have to pick one of them, I'm probably gonna go with the Drew Brees Graham stack just because it gives you a little bit of salary relief because Drew Brees is only $8,300, and I think a lot of people are gonna be on those top guys. For some reason, Drew Brees has kind of fallen under the radar compared to the Rodgers, the Manning, the Luck. So I like a Drew Brees Jimmy Graham stack. If you want an expensive guy, my favorite, I kind of already touched on it. My favorite cheap option is that RG3 Deshaun stack. I think they're gonna have a really nice game all around, and it frees up a lot of salary for you. You can do some really nice things with the RG3 Deshaun stack. Kind of I don't know if it's a sneaky stack this week, but you guys kind of touched on Chip Kelly's quarterback, who I refuse to say his name. I might roll out one or two stacks with the Eagles and pair him up with Macklin. Matthews has been all the rage lately, but he's been putting out some pretty unsustainable numbers if you look at his touchdown to target ratio. Macklin's still the more heavily targeted guy. He's a couple $1,000s more than Matthews, so I think you might get some contrarian lineups just because I think quite a few people are going to stack him with Matthews just because of what he's been doing recently and because he's cheaper. So if you want to go with, if you want to save even more at quarterback, I don't mind Chip Kelly's quarterback with Macklin.
That's great stuff with the Chip Kelly quarterback thing.
I refuse to say I'm starting the guy who used to play for the Jets and used to play for USC.
I hear you. It does make it sit better. For me, my stacks on FanDuel this week, I have paid up in a few places for Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson. I think that's a great matchup. A lot of projected points there. I do have a Brady Gronk stack in a few places too. Yeah. Brady is a little cheaper than some of those top guys, but in a game where I really feel like there's going to be a lot of points, I think that makes sense. And I am going with a Washington stack, but I'm actually more often I'm doing, especially on DraftKings with how cheap he is, Griffin and Pierre Garçon. Yeah. I really feel like that. With this matchup, Tampa Bay, it's kind of both of those guys are going to eat today, and I feel like it's still part of me. I know this sounds crazy, but still part of me feels like Garçon is a little bit of like the better receiver.
I agree 100% on that. I mean, he's always kind of been the volume guy, the target guy. It's been weird. He's had a couple of games this year with really low targets, which is really rare for him.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm going with the RG3 Deshaun stack is because just for diversification reasons.
Right.
Garçon's so cheap that I have him plugged into a lot of my other GPP lineups. So just for diversification's sake, I'm stacking RG3 with Deshaun. You can make an argument that you stack them together. In the case where you have a quarterback that just goes nuclear in a 4-touchdown game, I don't have a problem with going with two guys with a great matchup because the chances of all 4 of those touchdowns going to one of those guys is super slim. If RG3 goes crazy for 4 touchdowns, then you're in a situation where you have 2 wide receivers that are a lot more likely to get 2 touchdowns than if you take another cheap guy from another team. So I wouldn't mind doing a double stack there. I don't think I'm going to have any. But like you said, with Pierre Garçon's salary and the great matchup, why not? There aren't too many guys that are priced that cheap that you can that have such a good situation. Maybe someone like Keenan Allen, $4,500 on DraftKings. But yeah, I can see a situation where you roll out both of them in one lineup.
Yeah, good mention on Allen. He's a guy who's pretty cheap on both sites.
Yeah, $4,500 on DraftKings and
64 on FanDuel.
I actually have him in a couple of cash game lineups too, just because he's so cheap, and I think they're in a really favorable situation against Oakland. Their running back situation is murky this week with Ryan Matthews back, so. Keenan Allen could have a good game. He's still the most targeted guy on the team. He's still averaging over 8 targets a game. So those targets they're going to turn into fantasy points. It's going to even out. He accounts for a quarter of the team's total targets, and again, just that great matchup. Favored by 10 at home, projected to score almost 28 points. I think Keenan Allen is relatively safe considering his price this week.
Yeah, I hear you. Actually, I have a shitload of Pierre like all over the place this week. Yeah, so I
have a lot of the same guys across the board. It makes me super nervous because I'm really conservative when it comes to diversifying and I keep really good track of that stuff, and there's just such glaring values this week, especially at wide receiver, that I'm really risking it this week. But the upside's big.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. Actually, in a lot of places too, where I don't have Garçon or like I didn't stack Garçon and Griffin. Then I went with Morris, and that's kind of like contradicts itself a little bit. But I feel like there's a small chance that all of those guys could have a big game. Actually, a pretty decent chance because the defense is so bad and they're at home.
For sure.
But it's kind of a way that I've sort of. I have all this Garçon in one places, and then in the other place I have Morris just in case that's the way the game goes.
theoretically, that raises your floor of your overall, weekly portfolio, if you want to look at it that way. And that's something that I think a lot of people fail to account for in daily. A lot of times you look at your one lineup on FanDuel and you say this floor is whatever I think it is, and then this floor on DraftKings is whatever I think it is, and I'm done. I I'm a firm believer in looking at it. We're stock traders here. It's a full portfolio, and each week we're diversifying, and that's something that I talked a bit about diversification last week, and what your goals are in your game. Um, you know, if you're a guy that you only have 16 weeks to 17 weeks to play NFL. If you're just trying to maximize your upside, then don't diversify. It's a short season. Even with diversification, it's going to be hard to recognize your true EV in an NFL season. So if your goal is to maximize upside, go single lineups on each site. Go with what you think are the best values, but you're adding risk. It's not unnecessary risk. It's just a different goal. I play massive volume, and I'm just kind of trying to grind out a profit. So I'm a little more conservative. But if you have a bankroll that you could replenish easily, and you're not playing with your rent money, then by all means play single lineups and maximize that upside. But when I talk bankroll, it's more of a conservative approach.
Yeah, I get that's kind of the way I go with it. Is I have a set amount, and I'm not messing with my real life money, so I tend to go for upside. And it's been an up and down ride so far.
It always is. I'm on one of the biggest coolers I've been since I started daily fantasy the last few weeks. So it's tough.
There's just so many different angles to go with this daily stuff, and that's why we really appreciate you coming on every week. I know we talked last time about adjusting and having you on for more of the entire show. We'll probably do that next week. I was a little rushed this morning, so.
No worries.
But again, TJ, really appreciate it. Any closing thoughts? Any work you want to pub out there before we close this out?
Check out Sportable. We just added a daily fantasy only channel, which is super cool. I'm putting out DraftKings and FanDuel picks every week. My DraftKings cards on Sportable, I'm just putting out my favorite plays of the week. On FanDuel, I'm putting out what I call the buried treasures. It's basically just the punt plays, some super cheap options at each position. They're not the top values, so hopefully people realize that when they're reading my FanDuel cards. It's not the top values at each position. It's my top cheap values, what we call the punt plays. And then I'm super excited on that DFS channel. We're getting Sir Lord Reeves to drop his knowledge, which is really cool. That guy is never wrong, it seems like. So if you want to get access to his DraftKings picks, all you have to do is sign up for Sportable. It's free, but you got to sign up to get access to Sir Lord Reeves picks.
Yeah, definitely. That's something we mentioned up at the top of the show. And two more things just came across my timeline that are interesting. Well, one, DraftKings is working again now.
Yep, I just refreshed it. I've been refreshing the whole time we were talking, waiting, because I have lineups to submit still.
Oh, I hear you. I was feeling okay. I got most of mine in already, but I did want to make a few changes. I wanted to get a little more Edelman into my lineups after talking with Dan today. And two, it looks like Isaiah Crowell is starting for the Browns today at running back.
Oh, man. I haven't touched that backfield in weeks anyway, but that's
I have a little bit of Terrance West this week, so that's kind of making me nervous.
In season long or GPPs or what?
GPP.
Hopefully not cash games.
No cash games, but in a few GPPs I had Terrance West. So
what's his price point? I haven't even.
It's like 44 on DraftKings.
44 on DraftKings, yeah. That's a tough one. You gotta have. I don't have the cojones, especially with Hill at 4,500. It's hard to. That's a hard one.
Yeah, I might actually go out and swap a little bit of West in for a Crowell. I know that seems kind of counterintuitive, anyways, but we'll see. It could work out. It could not. But yeah, so that's. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say there's a situation where I could see them being up big with with that matchup against Mallet. It could get ugly
Yeah.
with I keep saying rookie quarterback. He's not a rookie, but basically his first start feels like
Yeah.
a rookie. That situation where it could get out of hand, just because quarterbacks they struggle.
Yeah, they do, and I don't think Mallet is that good of a player anyway. So, yeah,
But he has a big arm.
Oh, I could give a shit. I hate quarterback analysis so much.
Oh, it's the worst.
It's the worst. Yeah, I did a typology about it over the off season, and that's kind of what I stick by. And Mallet is one of the types that I don't really like. But anyways, kind of going off the rails here last minute. But all right, so that's going to conclude it for the show this week. Really appreciate everybody sticking around. We had a lot of good viewers, a lot of good questions this week, so appreciate that. And we'll be back here next week talking fantasy football. So good luck to everybody.
Later.